All right. Hello, everyone. I always have to have my water. We're starting a bit behind. I actually had rescheduled the stream because I actually overbooked myself and realized that I had a family event. So I had to kind of rush out of there and get over here to go live with you all. But anywho, hello. Happy Sunday. I hope all of you are having a great Sunday. And today, this evening, we are discussing the criminal investigation against T.I. and Tiny. We'll first start out with just some media articles about the case so you can kind of familiarize yourself with it if, for some reason you're kind of behind or if you're unaware, because listen, I understand we're all busy and you may not have even had the chance to even get the gist of what's going on. So let me just say hello to everyone first and then we'll jump right in. I want to say hi to KKC, peace. Hi to Honeybee. Hi to Amari Shager, of course, my sis. Love you. Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm gonna put a little hello in the chat just to make sure. Okay, that appears to be working. So let's jump right into it. Let's first read some of the media articles. We'll read from People and Vulture, and I think Complex as well. I think I pulled one of those articles and kind of get the gist of what exactly are T.I. and Tiny being accused of. Then we're going to talk about what laws apply to what they're being accused of and potential imprisonment time that goes along with those laws. If at any point you have a question, you can just hold it for a moment. I'll stop intermittently and say, hey, does everyone have a question? And then kind of let you put your question in the chat. All righty. So welcome back to Empowered Esquire TV. I am your host, Phyliciadcpearson. A bit in a fluster today, but that's okay. I made a commitment to you and I'm here, right? All righty. So let's share my screen. Hopefully I have everything ready to go. I should, but technology can be unpredictable. All right, here we are. So I have the Vulture article up first. But you know what? I'd like us to start with this article on The Cut. It's a section of the New York Times. And really, it tends to talk about, celebrity issues. So here we go. All of the assault allegations against T.I. and Tiny. Now, let me also add this. You guys know that YouTube has these strange rules and these strange algorithms. So bear in mind that I will be using some word variations, right? I will not just be using certain words because that will stop the video from being recommended for other people to enjoy it, okay? So all of the allegations against T.I. and Tiny. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed that rapper T.I. Clifford Harris is currently under investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department following multiple allegations of sexual assault against him and his wife, Tamika Tiny Harris. The investigation comes after months of accusations from at least 30 people, 17 of whom came forward in March to press charges. Per their lawyer, the victims have accused the couple of varying degrees of sexual abuse. Oh man, I just ruined it for myself. Drugging and harassment. In January, a woman shared dozens of allegations against T.I. and Tiny on Instagram. In a January Instagram post, Atlanta-based entrepreneur Sabrina Peterson claimed that T.I. once put a gun to her head. Per Billboard, Peterson, who was once close friends with Tamika Harris, also posted further allegations. Now, just to update you a bit on those allegations, since she has made those allegations, T.I. has responded. He vehemently denied her allegations, and she responded again, in which she said that she is so committed to what she's alleged that she's willing to sue for defamation, and also that she will withdraw her suit for defamation if T.I. and Tiny admit that she is correct about what she's alleged and they publicly apologize. So it sounds like Sabrina Peterson is very, very serious about her allegations. Now, the article goes on to say the couple denied the allegations, with T.I. posting an 8-minute Instagram video calling the accusations egregious. Peterson has since filed a defamation claim. Didn't I say that? Against the couple, claiming that their public denial of the allegations she put forth has led to harassment and threatening messages from people who support the couple. So I'd like to add that it is one thing for you to allege that someone has done something to you, right? But it is another thing altogether for you to sue that person for defamation when they deny what they have done to you and they allege that you are lying. I want us to take note that the fact that Sabrina Peterson is willing to file a defamation claim speaks volumes. It says that she believes that she is being truthful about what she's alleged. And it also says that she believes that she can prove that what she alleged actually happened. And that is bad news for T.I. and Tiny. Okay. Now, the article goes on to say a few more months later, 11 more alleged victims came forward. And on March 1st, attorney Tyrone A. Blackburn held a video conference detailing allegations against the couple on behalf of the 11, at that time, people that he represents. So now we're going to hop from the Cut article and actually hop into the People so we can now discuss the LAPD investigation. I'm going to see if there are any questions very briefly. Not yet. All right, so I will continue. So now here you see a People article stating that the LAPD have launched an investigation against T.I. and Tiny Harris. So now let's go down to the pertinent parts for us, right? According to an LAPD investigative report obtained by People, the woman claims she met the couple at a Los Angeles club and accepted a sip of Tiny's drink. The couple then invited her back to their hotel room where the three allegedly showered together. The woman alleged she felt ill when T.I. performed a MEX act on her, to which she says she told him no. Pause. As we should all be aware at this point, whenever a sexual act is occurring and one person says no, they have withdrawn consent. So if for some reason that sexual act continues, that act is continuing without consent, and that is a crime. Back to the article. She told investigators that her last memory was sitting down on a couch after throwing up in the bathroom, and that she woke up the next morning very sore with a burning and itching sensation in her genital area. T.I. and Tiny faced accusations of sexual abuse earlier this year when a woman alleged on Instagram, again, Sabrina Peterson, that the couple would force women to take drugs and have sex with them, and that T.I. once held a gun to her head. Again, Sabrina Peterson, right? So now we know that Sabrina Peterson is suing T.I. and Tiny for defamation. So let's see exactly what it was that T.I. said in response to these allegations. A rep for the couple told People in a statement, "Mr. and Mrs. Harris want to be on record, and more importantly, want the public to know that they emphatically deny in the strongest way possible the egregiously appalling allegations being made against them." So we now have the gist of an LAPD accusation as well, right? Or Los Angeles accusation. And now let's get into the gist of a Los Angeles accusation. This is here in the Vulture as well. So this is a Las Vegas woman, a woman from Nevada, who has an allegation against T.I. and Tiny. Here is her allegation. The Las Vegas woman, last name Jenks, said she met T.I. and Tiny, or said she met Tiny in a bathroom at Las Vegas's McCarran International Airport on August 18th, 2010, when she was 30 years old. She said Tiny invited her to a hotel room with her and T.I. that night, and she later met the couple at the Venetian. Jenks said Tiny gave her a Patron shot, and she felt dizzy and confused after taking it, per the report. The couple offered Jenks Molly soon after, which she said she took as well. She said that T.I. tried to undress her, but she told him to stop because he was being too aggressive. Whenever I do this, you guys, I'm not creating these air quotes. This is directly from the article. She later said she performed moral mex on Tiny and had vaginal mex with T.I. And she told police that she believed she was unable to consent because she was given an allegedly spiked drink and drugs. In a written statement to police, Jenks added that the next day, T.I. forced her to go with him on his tour bus to Los Angeles. So pause, take note here. She's in Nevada, She's assaulted in Nevada, and then she's put on a bus and forced to go to Los Angeles. Now, in Los Angeles, the woman says that T.I. forced her to have sex with him on the bus. She wrote that T.I. took her ID and forced her to go with him to Miami, where she said he made her have sex with multiple women that she did not know. The day after, Jenks said T.I. wanted to take her to Atlanta, but then sent her home instead. She described screaming and crying as she traveled with T.I. and wrote that afterward, her life has never been the same. Blackburn, the original attorney that we spoke about, is also representing Jenks. His office confirmed this to Vulture. Blackburn states that Jenks's claim matches one he announced in March of a woman who was trafficked across Nevada, California, and Florida. So now that we've read the gist of what these accusations are, we're going to take a quick pause. I'll take a sip of water per my usual, and I'll see if we have any questions in the chat. So remember, there are at this point over 11 people with accusations, but we've just read 2 or 3 witness accounts. If you're wondering why you're not able to see more witness accounts and witness statements online, you have to know that there is a heightened, let me stop screen share for this moment. There is a heightened sense of privacy, right, and confidentiality with sexual crimes. So you'll find that police do not release those reports willingly, right? You have to have some certain level of involvement in the case for them to give you the report. And you'll find that because of that, those reports don't very often make it to the internet. So that is the reason that if you just do a search, you won't really find, the actual police reports here. It's confidential because of the type of crime that's being alleged. Peace, Alikia. I hope I said your name right. Please forgive me if I didn't. And I see KKC has a question. So she was kidnapped. We will get to what the potential illegalities were. We're going to discuss next what the potential crimes are. I see Honeybee has a question. Can Blackburn handle all of these cases alone? Is that normal for an attorney? Awesome question, Honeybee. So yes, it is normal for an attorney to take this type of case where there are multiple plaintiffs, but here's how the cases worked. One moment, water break. So usually, let's say, for example, Tyrone Blackburn, right? He would take the case as the attorney himself, but he would have an entire team of assistants. He would have 1 or 2 paralegals. He may also have a legal assistant. He may also have a clerical assistant and an intern. So technically, he's the attorney of record, right? He's the only attorney on the case. But I assure you, Tyrone Blackburn is not working on this case solely alone. He probably has an entire team that is assisting him with obtaining medical records to, of course, substantiate the accusations, right? Going through the medical records, finding witnesses to corroborate, communicating with the media, all of that. So Mr. Blackburn probably has an entire team. I see Wayne Montgomery also has a question. Because of the drugs and travel, could this become a federal case? We'll get there as well. I'd like to note that you guys see I don't have my screen up today. I'm kind of letting you see a little bit of my background. So feel free to let me know if you like that or if you prefer when I have the screen up and there's nothing in the background. Okay. All right, so now let's get into what the potential crimes could be here. I drew up a little cheat sheet for us with a list of crimes that could potentially be charged based off of what we've read today. We're going to start with state crimes and then go into federal, okay? So I'll share my screen again. Oh, thank you, Wayne. Wayne says he likes the background. Okay, so we may keep doing it this way. Share screen, and I will pull up my little cheat sheet I made for us and make it full screen. So on the state level, right, they're facing, in my humble opinion, quite a few charges, potentially. So sexual trafficking, sexual abuse, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and possession of an illegal substance. So we are going to break down each and every one of those charges. And per usual, what I like to do when we talk about the law is empower you, right? That's why the channel is called Empowered. It's showing you how to find the law yourself So you're not reliant on anyone to look up these kinds of things, right? So let's go to the internet here, and I'm going to show you how you can find what laws mean. So here we go. Here I am in the Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute. It's law.cornell.edu. This is an amazing source for you to look up any type of crime, see the definition of the crime, see where you can find the actual law that could be used to charge that crime, right? And then they even, put other little resources down here. This is an awesome tool for anyone who wants to arm themselves with the law and what it means, okay? So let's start with, we know what sexual assault is, right? We get that, right? Sexual trafficking is just when you take someone from one location to another location for the purpose of enacting a sexual assault on them. So with that being said, let's dive into some of the more complex ones, which is false imprisonment and kidnapping. So another great tool for when you're looking at different laws, this is called Find Law. This is findlaw.com. And you can just quickly go to this website and find different types of laws and their explanation, right? So here is false imprisonment. All states have false imprisonment laws to protect against unlawful confinement. To prove a false imprisonment claim as a tort in a civil lawsuit, teaching moment. A tort is a crime against a person. I shouldn't say crime. I should say a tort is an action against a person that causes that person injury. It is the civil version of many crimes, right? So for sexual assault, there is a tort that matches that claim. For different other crimes such as kidnapping, such as harassment and assault, such as felony assault, things like that, all those criminal crimes against your person, there is a civil law that is the other side of that. And those instances are called torts, okay? So here is how you prove false imprisonment, or how someone could be charged with false imprisonment. There was a willful detention. So that means that someone willingly held another person hostage in some sort of way, right? Detention. The detention was without consent. So the person who is being held expressed that they wanted to leave, okay? And the detention was unlawful. That means this is not someone being imprisoned for a crime. This is not someone being arrested, right? This is someone holding another person without any legal reason to hold them. So when we think about willful detention without consent and unlawful, what do we think about? We think about the young woman, right, who was put on the tour bus and was told that she could not leave. The story that she has provided fulfills every element of false imprisonment. Now let's talk about kidnapping, because many people don't know the difference between false imprisonment and kidnapping. So let's jump into that. And there is a difference, by the way. They are two different charges. Kidnapping, here on our lovely Cornell Law School website. So definition. A crime at common law consisting of an unlawful restraint of a person's liberty by force or show of force so as to send the victim into another country. Under modern law, this crime will usually be found where the victim is taken to another location or concealed. So notice the difference between false imprisonment and kidnapping. For false, I live in an urban area, so forgive me if you hear the ice cream man outside. I kind of wish I was free and I could go get some ice cream, but anywho. So the difference between false imprisonment and kidnapping, right, is that false imprisonment, the person could be detained and never moved. So for example, you could be kept in one room for months without your consent, and that's just false imprisonment. But for kidnapping, you have to have been taken from one place, right, and brought to another. So now you realize that with the witness statement where she was put on the tour bus, right? It was false imprisonment to hold her on the tour bus, and then kidnapping to take her from one place to another while holding her on the tour bus. So that is the difference between false imprisonment and kidnapping, okay? So let's go back to our little cheat sheet here. We also mentioned possession of an illegal substance as one of the state charges, right? So let's talk about that. Here we have on our little resource, findlaw.com, right? Drug possession. So requirements to prove possession of drugs. Possession of certain illicit drugs can violate both federal and state laws. We know that, okay? But in order to prove this crime, the prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knew the drug in question was a controlled substance and that he or she knowingly had possession or control over the drug. So remember that several of these alleged victims are alleging that Tiny had something in her drink that caused them to become totally out of sorts after they drank it, right? So the prosecution, if they charge possession, they would have to prove that Tiny knew that there was a controlled substance in that drink and that she knowingly had possession of that drink and was giving it to these other women, right? So now back to our original sheets. I think we've covered our state charges. So I'm going to get back into the chat here and see if we have any questions. Are there any questions about the state charges? Let's see. I see Crime Spotter asked, could a prosecutor also link it to potential human trafficking? I almost said the word again. These YouTube rules are going to have me so flustered and confuddled. So, sexual trafficking is the partner offense to human trafficking, right? The only difference between mex trafficking and human trafficking is that human trafficking could be for any reason. So human trafficking could be someone being kidnapped and taken across state lines for the purpose of them being in some type of indentured servitude. So to be a chef or a maid or a nanny, right? But mex trafficking has to be for the purpose of committing some type of sexual assault on them, right? It sounds so silly to say it that way, but that's the difference. So in this instance, the appropriate charge would be mex trafficking, not human trafficking. Okay. Someone wanted to know if I can help you all. Oh, Honeybee wanted to know if I can help you all understand the statute of limitations in these cases. Why, yes, we will actually address statute of limitations when we get into the federal laws, because these victims are all over the country. So they're in California, they're in Georgia, they're in Nevada. And all of those states have so many different statute of limitations. So we're not even going to dive into that. But when we get to our federal laws, we will talk about the statute of limitations in the federal laws. Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions. No. Oh, I see KKC. So KKC knows his stuff. He knows that that's Thurgood Marshall, you guys. Notice how much of a live rookie I am here. I'm like pointing to the wrong side. I don't take myself too seriously, by the way. But yeah, so that is Thurgood KKC. It was actually painted especially for me by my uncle. His name is Rohan Henry, and he is an extremely talented artist. All righty. So Crime Spotter also has the question, let's say they are indicted. Could either party be offered a deal to roll, or since they're married, it's a no-go? Very good question. So for those of you who are unaware, there is something called spousal privilege. A lot of people allege, notice I say allege, that the rapper Fabulous only married his longtime, long-suffering girlfriend, Emily B, because he was being charged with a domestic violence assault, and they wanted to try to invoke some sort of spousal privilege, right? So Crime Spotter, you have a good point. You cannot be forced to roll on or to testify against your spouse, right? But you can choose to. You can choose to, right? But you just can't be forced to, okay? Could T.I.'s public statements be used against him, asks Wayne Montgomery? Yes, and particularly in the defamation case. So we know that Sabrina Peterson has a defamation case against T.I. and Tiny, right? She is probably going to use the public statements of T.I. in which he says, this is egregious. I deny this. It absolutely did not happen. I assure you she will probably use those statements in her case when she's proving that it did happen. So that is what she'll use to say, he's defaming me. He is calling me a liar, and I am not lying. Okay. I don't see any other questions yet, but we will take a moment. I'll take a little moment and pat my face here. And we'll see if anyone else has any other questions about our state laws before we move into the federal laws. And you guys, don't forget the tools that I've shared with you. Cornell Law School and their Legal Institute, and findlaw.com. Okay, of course, they're not legal textbooks, right? But this is not for someone who's in law school. This is for the everyday person. If for some reason, and I'm sure the law at some point became pertinent in your life, right? So if for some reason you find yourself wanting to know what a law means. Okay, so no further questions. So let's hop into the potential federal charges that T.I. and Tiny could face. Share screen again, right? And back into our cheat sheets, as I like to call it. So right here, you guys, this is the pertinent federal chapter of law, right? When you're talking about sexual abuse. So it's USC, or the United States Code, if you'd like to call it that. Title 18, Part 1, Chapter 109A, okay? So now, as we dive into this, let's talk about what makes something federal. So it has to fall under federal jurisdiction. So what is that? Well, that's maritime law. So that's if you're out at sea. That is if you're in a correctional facility, or if for some other reason there's some territorial jurisdiction, right? So if you're crossing state lines, or if you're in some other federal territory, maybe a United States territory of some sort, okay? It's also important to note that certain sexual crimes become federal when the act is aggravated. So that's an exception, you guys. So you could commit, or I shouldn't say you, because I know none of you would ever do that. So someone could commit a sexual crime that usually would not be federal at all. But because of the way they commit the act, it's now federal. So that is what the law means. Whenever you see it's the term aggravated, the law means committed in a certain way that makes it especially bad. That's what that means. So here are the instances in which someone could commit a certain crime in a state that usually wouldn't be federal and would usually be a state crime, but could be aggravated to a federal crime. Here are the instances. So you have aggravated sexual abuse, which includes the use of force, fear, or threats of bodily injury, kidnapping, and death to coerce the victim to engage in an otherwise undesired sexual act. Well, here's what that means. That means if someone uses some type of physical brawn against you, if someone is holding the victim down, or if someone is threatening that they will harm the person's family, harm someone close to them, anything of that nature, it's now aggravated, and it could be elevated to a federal crime. Notice I say could because it may not be, right? It doesn't have to happen, but it could be aggravated to a federal crime. Elevated, I should say, to a federal crime. Now, here's one I've highlighted for us. Using other means, such as illicitly providing drugs to an unknowing victim in order to render the victim unconscious for a blank act. So, remember, all of these accusations, they tend to vary, but they have one thing in common. What is that? Drugs. Every accusation talks about being given some type of drug, usually not knowing what was going on, and then being rendered unconscious, right? So from what we've seen, every accusation that we've reviewed is aggravated and could potentially be elevated to the federal level, right? And now someone asked about human trafficking, right? So here's the federal law for human trafficking, because remember, trafficking or sexual trafficking is a state crime, okay? So human trafficking, which US law defines as using force, fraud, or coercion in the acts of recruiting, transporting, harboring, providing, or otherwise obtaining any person for forced labor or commercial acts. Now let's break that down. We know what force and fraud mean, right? But what is this portion about commercial sex acts? What does that mean? Here is what this section means, you guys. This section means that even if T.I. and Tiny put a woman on a plane and brought her from New York to Miami with her consent, it is still a federal crime because they are transporting her for the purpose of a commercial mex act. Here's what that means. There are several of these victims who are alleging that when they were brought to wherever T.I. and Tiny brought them, they had interactions with several different people, not just T.I. and Tiny. So when you have a victim that is being given to several different people for several different types of acts, it's going to be easy to take that step into saying this was commercial. Some type of payment was exchanged between T.I. and Tiny as an entity and these other people who were receiving interactions with these women. So even if some of these women were to allege that they went consensually, if they were used in a way in which payment was received by T.I. and Tiny, it is still a federal crime. And on that note, I will mention that one of the victims alleges that T.I. and Tiny provided women for Nellie on numerous occasions, and that Nellie provided them with monetary compensation for the women. Okay. Now, another aggravated act, sexual abuse that results in death, and sexual crimes that are not limited to a single U.S. state, right? So we talked about traveling into another state, right? And then some other things that we won't say for those reasons, and also crimes that occur on federal land, okay? So we're going to work our way into the Statute of Limitations, but we're going to have a quick conversation about sentencing guidelines. Before we do that, I want to check the chat. I want to see if I have any questions. Hi, Renee, and hi, Hello Mello. I see Crime Spotter has a question. I'll take a moment and pat my face here. Crime Spotter wants to know, so if someone's family is held and threatened with death unless they commit a crime, can they be found innocent after committing said crime? Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who are unaware, there is a term in the law called duress, and it really just means you're being stressed, you're being forced. And anything that you do under duress, you can make the argument in your defense that you should not be held responsible for it because you were doing it under stress, under fear, you were coerced, right? And you'll often see that when you have duos committing crimes. You'll often see a man and a woman, a lot of man and woman duos accused of serial murders. You'll often find that the woman says that the man threatened her, she was under duress, he forced her to participate in the crimes. So yes, if you commit a crime under duress, you can make the argument in your defense and you may be found not guilty. You may be acquitted if your family was being threatened, someone close to you was being threatened, or if you in the physical are being threatened. Wayne Montgomery has a question. Does T.I.'s prior criminal convictions enhance the possibility that he may do life in prison if he is convicted in a federal court? We are going to talk about that in a moment when we talk about sentencing guidelines. We're going to have a real conversation about prosecution and about how defendants are sentenced, okay? And it's going to be one of those not so pleasant conversations, but good information, good things for you to know, okay? I see that Crime Spotter asked, are we also looking at potential RICO charges as others were named, sort of like a Jeff Epstein type of case? Potentially, right? But Nellie was mentioned as an aside, and I haven't seen any reports that there were police reports naming other people, but potentially, yes. So let's hop into sentencing, shall we? All righty, now back to our sheet here. Okay. So if you have had previous convictions, particularly of a serious nature, it is very likely that your sentencing and your terms of imprisonment will be longer and more severe. And then I have a little note to self, elaborate on sentencing guidelines. So let's do that, shall we? So for the most part, prosecutors, assistant U.S. attorneys, et cetera, are given something called sentencing guidelines. It is literally a chart that has the type of crime and then a range of sentence of imprisonment that goes along with that crime. If you have already committed a previous crime, if you have, keywords here, previous convictions, you are going to be further along on the chart than someone who has no convictions. So here's a random example with totally random numbers. Let's say the charge is possession of a firearm, illegal possession of a firearm, right? Someone with no convictions, your ADA or AUSA, may look at their chart and see, oh, okay, that's 7.5 to 10 years of imprisonment. Okay. That would be on this lower section of the chart, right? Well, let's say the person now has 2 or 3 previous convictions. So there are 2 or 3 spaces over on that chart. Now you've gone from 7.5 to 10 to perhaps 15 to 20. Same crime, but the person with previous convictions is facing more time. That is called sentencing guidelines. And most government attorneys are given a sentencing guideline chart, sheet, book, workbook, something of that nature. And for the most part, they have to follow it, okay? Except for very special circumstances. Now, someone also asked about sex crime. Look at me, you guys. I mean, algorithm to the wind, right? I mean, I'm doing it. I might as well just continue. Someone also asked about statute of limitations. It's just so difficult to remember that. It's not natural, right? So here's the statute of limitations for federal crimes of this nature. Because remember, for states, it varies. Under the modern federal rules, prosecution, trial, or punitive sanctions regarding non-capital federal offenses cannot be instituted if no indictment or entry of information has occurred within 5 years of the offense. So what that means is, for the most part, you have to have some type of charges brought, some type of indictment, some type of actual charging document written up within 5 years of the offense. So within 5 years of what happened. So for example, let's say someone said that T.I. and Tiny committed an assault against them in 2005. There would have to be some type of charging document written up by 2010. However, we should note that when it comes to sex crimes, I did it again, who cares at this point? That statute of limitations is regularly extended, right? So it's regularly brought up to anywhere from 7 to 10 years, depending, right, on what's going on in the case. Now, you may ask, why is that? Well, here is the reason. Very recently, which is why you see the term modern, right? Very recently, the government has taken a special interest in encouraging the victims of these types of crimes to come forward. A lot of it has to do with the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese, and a lot of those cases where people come forward after 30, 40 years, right? So the federal government decided, you know what, we're not a state, we're the federal government, and we have more power. We want to encourage victims of these crimes to come forward. And how do we do that? Well, let's make a loophole. Let's give ourselves some flexibility. So the federal government has given itself the flexibility to extend the statute of limitations if for some reason it decides that that case is serious enough, sensitive enough, or involves a victim who was vulnerable enough for them to be given more time to come forward. Okay? So let me go into the chat here and see what's going on. All righty, so hello to everyone. Does anyone have any questions about the federal crimes that we discussed, about sentencing guidelines, about statute of limitations for federal crimes? Anything at all? The floor is now open for questions, and I'll give you guys a few seconds to drop your questions in the chat. Oh, Crime Spotter has a question already. Coffee. Crime Spotter wants to know, can a state case be dropped so a stronger federal case can be made? Potentially so. But what is more likely to happen, though, is that both cases will be occurring at the same time. So, what is more likely to occur is that you will have someone facing state charges and federal charges at the same time. And I will also add to that, let's say that you do have T.I. and Tiny facing state charges and federal charges at the same time. What could happen and what will usually happen, right, is that the federal government will come to the state and they'll say, hey, listen, state of Georgia, we understand you have your case. We get it. But we have a federal case. So you need to wrap it up. So what will probably happen is the state case will be pushed along so that the federal case can really take over. That's usually what would happen. I see Wayne Montgomery wants to know, can Tiny divorce or separate from T.I. and agree to testify against him to get a lesser sentence? Absolutely, Wayne. She can absolutely, and quite frankly, she can agree to speak about what happened, whether she decides to stay with him or not, right? That's up to her. But she can absolutely separate herself and she can agree to testify against him for a lesser sentence. That is absolutely correct. So what would happen is that she would receive what is called in the law, I'll put it in the chat, immunity, right? That is what she would receive. So she would have a conversation with the prosecution, her attorney would. Here I am playing attorney for Tiny. My client is requesting immunity in exchange for her testimony. I have drafted a proposed immunity agreement because for those of you who don't know, immunity is not verbal. You get it in writing. You have an immunity agreement. I have drafted a proposed immunity agreement. It says that you agree to never come after my client again for any of the allegations that you have on record in any way whatsoever. If you agree to this, my client, Tiny, will now testify against T.I. and help you make your case stronger. So absolutely, she could agree to do that, and she would request an immunity agreement to do that, and she would request it in writing. Absolutely. Are there any other questions about the federal charges that we discussed? Are there any questions about the state charges as well? Sentencing guidelines, anything in the like? I will give everyone, per my usual, a few seconds. Okay, so I don't see any further questions in the chat at the moment. Oh, a question just popped up. All right, give me one moment because I'm pulling up another resource I want to share with you. I'll answer the question and then I'll hop into the next resource before we wrap it up. I stay on for about an hour. So being that we started at 5:30, we'll be ending around 6:30. Okay, Wayne Montgomery wants to know, can the feds extend the statute of limitations if they are investigating ongoing, continuing criminal behavior? Okay. Got it. So as you just read, the federal government has given themselves leeway. They have given themselves the ability to extend the statute of limitations when they see fit. As it says, based upon, the nature of the crime, the victim's identity, things like that. So absolutely, they can give themselves leeway to extend the statute of limitations. And they can also begin charging documents. So for example, if they have an ongoing investigation, they can bring forth an indictment as to one of the victims or two of the victims and then continue investigating because remember, that will help them toll that time on statute of limitations because they can tie in all of these accusations and say, hey, this one should not be timed out yet because we actually did start charging them in regards to this one, right? So they may find some way to extend it that way as well, but they do have the leeway to extend their statute of limitations. Another question, does a federal indictment on an trafficking charge implicate the children of the couple? Oh, no, absolutely not. The only people that are implicated by charges are the persons who are named on the charging document. So their children would not at all be implicated as defendants. And if in fact there are minors that are alleging that they were victims, then that would be a totally separate investigation and case. Crime Spotter is asking, could they take the kids away? I remember T.I. made some comments about his daughter that many found distasteful. Oh, okay. So Crime Spotter's question actually was, could these charges result in them losing their children? Absolutely. Absolutely. Most states have what they call the best welfare of the child requirements. And that is an entire list of different factors that the state considers when they're deciding whether or not a home is appropriate for a child to stay in. As I said, each state has their own factors, but they're really just more of the same. And almost every state has somewhere in there in that best welfare of the child something to do with crimes committed by a parent that are of a certain nature. So whenever you have a parent being accused of a crime that is sexual in nature, it's going to implicate their parenting, and it's going to be a, will minor children be taken away from them? Those crimes are viewed as crimes that affect the welfare of the children in that home. Yes, Crime Spotter. That's right. Yeah. Alrighty, so I'm going to show you one more resource and then we'll head off. I want you guys to have this at your disposal if ever you're deciding to look into this yourself, okay? So let me share my screen again. Alrighty, so here we go. This is Congressional Research Service, right? And this is an entire little pamphlet. It is, goodness, I don't know how many pages long. Let's see. It looks to be about 29 pages long. So honestly, that's not that bad, right? That's a light read. And this was written by Charles Doyle, a senior specialist in American public law, and of course, commissioned by Congress, as you see up here. And it is an entire pamphlet. It's an overview of federal criminal law regarding sex trafficking. So I'm going to copy that link and I'm going to paste it directly into the chat here. So everyone and anyone can read through that at your leisure, right? And very quickly here, I'm just going to read this first paragraph so you get a little intro into it, right? So sex trafficking is a state crime. So remember I said that. That charge is a state crime. Federal law, however, makes it a federal crime to conduct the activities of a sex trafficking enterprise in a way that affects interstate or foreign commerce, or that involves travel in interstate or foreign commerce. So remember the conversation that we had, right? The sex trafficking in itself, that's state crimes. So that would be the state of Georgia v. Clifford Harris and Tamika Harris, or the state of California v. Clifford Harris and Tamika Harris. But once you have them traveling, once you have victims saying, I was put on a tour bus and I was brought from Nevada to California, once you have victims saying that they were taken across state lines, now you've implicated federal law, okay? So does anyone have any questions about when federal law is implicated, or any questions in general about this T.I. and Tiny situation? Hi, beautiful Bernice. How are you? Hello, hello. And hello to everyone watching. So yes, we're opening the floor for questions at this time. If there aren't, we'll have a quick little wrap-up sesh, and then we will head out for the evening. Happy Sunday, everyone, by the way. I hope you guys have all had a nice, relaxing Sunday. I'll give you guys a few moments to see if you have any questions before we wrap up. Okay. You guys know that I could not get through a live without Mac. If you guys are from KKC's channel, you know my little doggy Mac. He's a little 3-pound Yorkie who thinks that he is like a big pit bull or a Rottweiler or something like that. And every noise that he hears outside, there we go. There we go. Well, at least we know he's healthy, right? I see Crime Spotter has a question. Was it the celebrity of T.I. or his wife that encouraged the parties to meet up? That is a good question. So the implication there, the heart of Crime Spotter's question is, do these alleged victims have any personal responsibility in this? You know, Crime Spotter, I do think that people are more likely to meet up with and to trust people who are celebrities. I think that as a society, and this is my personal opinion, as a society, we are obsessed with money. We are obsessed with fame. And people who have money and fame are like deities to us. And I do think that a lot of people put themselves in situations they would not normally put themselves in because they get to be around someone who's a celebrity, and it's sad. But I think we have society to blame for that. We have caused ourselves to be in such worship of money and fame that it really is just sickening at this point. Let's see. Oh, Mac, they're saying hi to you. He's not paying attention. Crime Spotter wants to know, can it be a case without his wife? Women usually trust other women when they're being recruited. Good point. So Crime Spotter, historically, a lot of these trafficking cases, even a lot of, as I mentioned, serial killers, I probably shouldn't have used that term. Whatevs. Usually use a female partner to recruit, right? To get women to come to somewhere with them. And a lot of these victims said that when they were out at a party or out at a club with T.I. and Tiny, Tiny would have a drink, and that allegedly she would say to them, "Oh, have some of my drink, have a sip of my drink." Now, later on, they thought to themselves, I never saw Tiny drink from that cup. But allegedly, she was going around giving each girl, "Oh, have a sip of my drink," kind of thing. So the allegation is that Tiny was being actively used to recruit these women. One of the victim statements even alleged that Tiny was present during the interaction, that she took the girl into the shower and washed up with her and coached the girl as to what T.I. liked. So the allegation is that she was very much so involved. KKC says, "Can't be out here being a groupie." It's the world that we live in, man. We're raising, especially this new generation, we're raising these children to be groupies because society is teaching them to worship anyone who has money. And that is a sad thing. Hello Mello wants to know, how far back are these allegations? Does that matter? Yes. So Hello Mello, remember we had that conversation about statute of limitations? So it does matter how far back some of these allegations are. There are over 11 women, and the allegations are ranging everywhere from 2005 to 2018. So there are some of them that may be, told as far as time is concerned. But remember, the federal government has given themselves leeway. So they can make the argument that it is very, very vicious of a crime, or that it's a criminal enterprise, and they can use that to extend the statute of limitations. Let's see. I see we have some other questions. Crime Spotter says, in the fake heiress case some years ago, she was found innocent of getting someone out of money. So it can be said that Tiny didn't tell them to drink. I'm lost, Crime Spotter. Help us out. Help us out. I'm lost. Yeah, I don't know. I'm lost on that one. Are there any other questions? It's 6:24. I, of course, still have a few minutes to be with you guys, and I'll stay on and hang out with you, take topic suggestions, and also take questions for like the next 4 or 5 minutes. So there are a few things that I have kind of spinning around in my mind as potential topics. So I kind of want you guys to let me know, what are you most interested in? So I'm going to actually type it in the chat. Are any of you aware of Nature Boy? Do you guys know who Nature Boy is? There is apparently his, I guess, wife or ex-girlfriend has served Nature Boy with a restraining order. Are you guys at all interested in me covering the whole Nature Boy Velvet and Carbonation saga, and whether or not Nature Boy could be charged with certain crimes and what time he could be facing? Are you guys interested in that? Let me know. Then also, of course, we have the ongoing saga with Kwame Brown and Charlemagne, right? So that's another thing. Are you guys interested in having me talk about Kwame Brown and Charlemagne, potential civil suits there, potential arguments therein? Are you guys interested in that? I see Wayne Montgomery said, "Are you following the NRA versus New York State?" No. That's a potential one. I'll jot that down. So if you would like to hear about Nature Boy and Velvet, put a 1 in the chat. I'll also cover carbonation, melanation, whatever they're calling themselves nowadays. I will cover them in their entirety. I'll cover the whole saga and talk about potential crimes. So put a 1 in the chat if you are interested in Nature Boy, Velvet, and melanation. All right. And I'll take those votes down. Okay, I see. Oh, 3 people thus far. Okay. If you're interested in hearing about Kwame Brown and Charlemagne and that whole saga, put a 2 in the chat. If you're voting to hear about Kwame Brown, Charlemagne, and that saga. Oh, hello, Nadine. How are you, lovely? Let's see. Okay, so I see a couple 2s as well. Huh. All right, so, another... KKC, how are you voting twice? Okay, so I guess we'll just cover both topics. How about that? How about that? You guys are lucky that I like you guys. So we'll cover both topics, okay? Right, hello, Mello. The chat is saying both. I mean, you vote, i.e., you pick one. You guys, but it's okay. I'll cover both. We are at 6:26. If any of you have any further questions, now's the time, because if not, I'm going to head out. It's a few minutes early, but I'm going to head out if none of you have questions. So if there are any questions about the T.I. Tiny saga, anything you'd like me to cover, anything therein, let me know. I'm going to put my email in the chat. You guys know I always have it in the description box as well. So the description box will be updated probably about an hour or so from now. And it will have all my contact info, the website for my law firm, all that good stuff. But for now, let me check my spelling. My email address is Phyliciadcpearson@gmail.com. I respond to emails pretty regularly, and I'm open to hearing from you. Thank you, Wayne, for the compliment. Someone has Letitia James v. Trump. All right, let me write that down. Letitia James v. Trump. Interesting. All righty, so I am going to head out. Renee wants to know, I want to know how Umar can run around saying he is a practicing psychologist and he isn't. That's an interesting question. So, there really isn't any criminal laws or criminal statutes that are in place regarding certain statements about your profession, right? Very often that is something that is handled either in civil court or something that is handled based upon whatever organization or board runs that license. So, for example, if someone was saying that they are a cardiologist and they're not, right? There's a board of medical examiners. They would handle punishing that person for saying they're a cardiologist when they're not. So that's not necessarily a crime. In most states, there really isn't any statute on the books, at least that they use, in which they would charge someone for that. But if someone were to say that they were victimized by someone who purported to be a certain profession when they weren't, then that could be a civil lawsuit, right? Wayne Montgomery said, you cannot impersonate a lawyer or law enforcement officer. That is correct. That is the caveat. Impersonating a law enforcement officer is a crime, but that's kind of obvious, right? Of course, if you're pretending to be a police officer, you're going to be charged for that, right? Crime Spotter would like to know, does R. Kelly have no way out of his case? Wow. That is an entire conversation. I will put that down on our topic list. Maybe we'll cover that as a topic. Because quite frankly, R. Kelly is facing a lot of the same accusations. He's facing a lot of trafficking charges, a lot of trafficking allegations, a lot of the same as T.I. and Tiny. And a lot of the issue that R. Kelly is having is that at this point, these allegations are so well documented, so well corroborated. Part of the issue with the T.I. and Tiny allegations is that a lot of them aren't very well corroborated, right? That issue does not exist in R. Kelly's case. There is so much corroboration in R. Kelly's case. There are so many women who have come forward, so many witnesses who have come forward. So notice that. Not just women who are victims, but women who are saying, I was there when this happened to that person, or I saw R. Kelly do this to that person. So I think that's what's really putting R. Kelly in a bind in his case, is that his allegations are being corroborated by witnesses who aren't necessarily the victims. So we're at 6:30. So I am going to go ahead and head out. KKC wants me to add Bill Cosby to the list, and I, of course, will. And so it looks like we have quite the roster coming up, you guys. We got Nature Boy and Melanation. We got Letitia James v. Trump, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, and Kwame Brown, and Charlemagne. Wow. Okay. So per usual, you guys know I go live every Sunday at 5. I also drop randomly and for your surprise viewing pleasure, some prepared videos. And I'll be dropping at some point this week a surprise video for you. But as far as lives, I'll see you live again next Sunday at 5. If it changes to 5:30, I'll change the reminders and you'll get a notification from YouTube, okay? All righty. Oh, hi, Pocket Watching with JT. Hello, hello. All righty. Everyone, go out and have yourselves a wonderful Sunday evening. Be empowered. And if you have any questions about the law, remember, when in doubt, send me an email. Talk to you later.